My number three movie that shaped my meet cute moment is Bottle Rocket from 1996. So
Oh,
this film is written and directed by Wes Anderson. It's actually his first feature film, starring Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, James Caan, and a bunch of other folks. The IMDb plot summary: three friends plan to pull off a simple robbery and go on the run. So the plot summary definitely doesn't sound like a romantic movie.
no.
And actually, this movie is not just about a romance either. There is a heist element of this too. It's a very kind of zany comedy. But I really like the moments in me, and then the reason why I put this on my list that really resonate is a relationship that Anthony, played by Luke Wilson, gets into and has with a member of a hotel staff that he's staying with called Inez. Well, first of all, have you seen this film? Had you seen this film before?
Yeah, I had seen it before, but I actually had forgotten about this
The
meet cute
romance.
thing
Yeah.
and the romance. And then when I watched it again for the podcast, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, of course. And I don't know, I had a smile throughout the entire time these two people
Yeah.
were together.
Yeah.
It I'll let you obviously get into it more, but yeah, it's just so perfect, and it sort of nails what you said, that this is something that could happen to really anybody.
Hmm.
But I think it sort of checks a lot of the things on my list of a good meet cute movies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Okay.
loved it.
Well, okay, cool. Yeah. So, it is not a movie I think that is remembered a lot for the extent that it's not a romantic comedy, but
No.
for me, this relationship and their moment, especially their initial meeting, always resonated with me. So,
Hmm.
the thing that's important about this and why I put this on my list is, this is meeting someone can give you a focus and direction in your life. Like this initial meet cute in the beginning of a relationship can help someone who feels kind of lost be found in a certain way. And Anthony, who's the main character here, played by Luke Wilson, like I mentioned, he in the beginning of the film, he's leaving like a mental hospital that he checked himself into because he has a line in the movie about like I just woke up one day and just didn't want to be surrounded with anyone that I'm surrounded with. He didn't like the way his life was going and sort of wanted to reset the whole thing. So he's clearly directionless. His best friend, played by Owen Wilson, Dignan, they immediately are like, let's plan this heist. And then he's sort of, he didn't even have like a 50-year plan. So he's very like, he has a direction, he has a checklist. And Luke's just kind of, or Anthony, is kind of going along with it. But you can tell he's still aimless and directionless. But then once he meets Inez, he has a direction in life now. He wants to just be with this woman, start a relationship with this woman, and that is all that is important to him. So I think to me, like I've definitely found in my relationships, sometimes, especially the ones that you're not looking for, kind of unexpectedly fall, on your plate, and you can't help but pursue it and see where it leads you. And then there is now a direction to your life if you want to follow this person and this relationship and kind of see where it goes. So I think that is a really important part in this film. But I want to
Yeah.
focus a little bit on this initial meet cute moment. So I think it's just very well done. And again, something that I think it captures the emotions and feelings of when you see someone
Hmm.
and it's not necessarily love at first sight, but it's like an attraction at first sight. So Anthony's in the pool and he's sort of like, sitting by the side of the pool. And then the camera suddenly zooms in on him. And then he looks over and sees Inez, who's a maid at this hotel. And the song comes up. It does this really great montage of like showing, like zooming in on like her hair as she's kind of putting it up in a bun, and then
Hmm.
shows her feet and her shoes. It's like a very quick sort of Wes Anderson-y, like, a couple of quick images. But to me, it really captures that, like, it is, at least from my experience, when you do feel this connection and have this meet cute moment, it's like it's the little things about the person that all of a sudden you notice.
Totally.
You are like, oh, she's listening to this song, and you remember that. It's like, oh, her hair was sort of like this, or him or her. Like, I don't want to make it,
Yeah.
just for me, it would be a woman, but, they would, you remember these small little things. And I think the way that Wes sort of does that quick montage kind of captures that. Do you know what I mean? Is that something you kind of
It's
feel
perfect.
too?
Yeah, I totally agree, because it is those little details that are landing on you so hard,
Hmm.
and those flashes, and accentuated by the music in the movie. And it's sort of this feeling of that the whole world has stopped, you know,
Exactly. Right.
and that's just sort of what happens in real life too. And this sort of a moment happens, but I think it's done in a very subtle way in this
Hmm.
movie. Like, it's not some like slow-mo shot. It's actually very sweet
It's
and
very
tender.
sweet. Yeah, it is.
It's just
Yeah.
so beautifully done. And that's what I was referring to, that I smiled through the entire montage because it's
Hmm.
just so sweet. And it's also kind of two people who are a little bit unlikely to be together, I think,
Of
which is also
course.
what
Yes.
makes it even more charming, you know?
Hmm.
And The last thing I would say is that in real life and in meet cute moments in movies, you're looking at the other person through the eyes of the other person,
Right,
right?
right,
And I
right.
think this
Exactly.
movie does such a great job of kind of really putting you in the point of view of both of them. Like the way
Hmm.
she's responding to him with her smiles and glances and the way he's looking at her,
Hmm.
you're instantly put in their shoes, which is the genius of the performances, but
Yes.
obviously
Yes.
Wes Anderson.
No, totally. Yeah. The other thing I really like about this, because you mentioned, unlikely kind of pairings, she
Yeah.
barely speaks English.
Yeah.
And it's that first, so when he's attracted her, that initial scene that I described, then he kind of gets out of the pool and sort of follows her around as she's
Yeah.
going to the rooms and like, tidying
I
up because
love
she's the
that.
maid. And he's just talking to her. Like she can't understand what he's saying, but he's so fascinated by her and just wants to get to know her. It's just this very mundane. And there's this great shot too. I can't remember if it's the end of this same sequence or like the next day when they're just sitting in the laundry room and like the towels are getting washed and it's just very simple. It doesn't have to be a grand, oh, now we're going to
Um,
Paris at the top of the Eiffel Tower. It could be something as just ordinary as you're just sitting with this person as laundry's getting done and that all you care about is being with that person. It doesn't really matter what's happening around you and how mundane that is. And that is definitely a feeling where when you get that initial spark, and especially early on in a relationship, I think it is sometimes those mundane things you do together are the most special, as opposed to
I
some
couldn't agree
grand big
more.
thing. And then just the one other scene that I just really also love and just point out here, and then I'd love to get more of your take on this, which is that when he initially sort of he's out there with Dignan in a restaurant, they're like an IHOP, and it's when he really realizes Luke Wilson's character does that he is like in love or really cares about Inez. He's like drawing her on the placemat,
Mhm.
and he admits to his friend Dignan, like, yeah, like I miss this woman, and Dignan's like, oh, okay, cool, like I'm not gonna be jealous of you, like that's great. He kind of gets approval for his friend, and he immediately like just runs back, and then they like consummate their relationship right there. And that montage of him running towards her with this great song by the band Love playing, it's just it's really it shows like the power of like connection between two people and how you just desperately want to be with this other person after really not even knowing them that well. I mean, again, they
Yeah.
barely had a conversation. So to me, even though yes, this is a heist movie and there's a lot of great, I mean, it's one of my favorite films. I think maybe one of the best debuts of any filmmaker ever who's had a long career afterwards.
Hmm.
So many things work, but to me, I'll always remember this film about Anthony and Inez's relationship.
I loved it so much that you put it on your list because like I said, I'd forgotten this was a meet cute movie, but it
Mm-hmm.
is definitely a meet cute movie. I would say two things. One, yes, they don't speak the same language, but that's sort of the charm and the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
That I think they understand what the other person is feeling totally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that is just the other person making you feel that you're heard and seen in a certain way because they're
Mm-hmm.
both like I mean, she seems fine, but I don't think she has that in her life.
No, no.
And with him too, like you said that he's directionless, and the person that he's hanging out with, who sure on paper literally has some direction, but that is not direction
No, no,
either.
no,
I
no.
mean,
Dignan's a whole other thing that we
whole
could have
other
a whole
thing, like
podcast about. One of my favorite characters on screen, Owen Wilson's breakthrough
amazing.
debut performance. But yeah, no, totally,
Yeah.
not really a direction. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this is like a sinking ship, for
totally,
sure. So,
exactly. Yes, yeah.
so for him to sort of be with somebody, you can almost feel like the stillness of the two being together, and in that montage of going from room to room,
Mm-hmm.
for the first time, I think in a long time or maybe ever, the two have sort of felt this, I don't know, kinship, this being seen, being heard,
Mm-hmm.
and almost kind of maybe I'm projecting too much of my own feelings on this, perhaps,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's sort of that feeling of that, yeah, life is worth something in a
Right,
way,
totally. Yep.
and it's sort of communicated, all of this is communicated in just like a brief 5-10 minute sequence, which is just
Mm-hmm.
so incredible. And you believe it that he will do anything for her. Like he
Right.
gives her the money, he's
Yeah.
back, all the things happen, and you totally buy it. So, and then on West, I don't know, this movie made me think of, I wish he would go back and make something
Yes.
like this again, which
Yeah.
is sweet and tender and biting, but without all the symmetry and all the production design
Mm-hmm.
intricacies and meticulousness that we know him now, the whole Russian doll thing, which
Mm-hmm.
I love as well,
Me
but
too.
this movie is just totally stripped down of all of that.
Yeah.
And I would love for him to do something simple like this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. We've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of his films on the podcast.
Yep.
Folks can go back and listen to those. But I agree with you. And for me, actually, I peg it to bring it back to Owen Wilson with the fact that when him and Owen co-wrote his first three features together, Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and then Tenenbaums.
Mhm.
And I think Owen Wilson brings a more like grounded sort of heart to those films. And then when
Mm.
Wes sort of partnered off with Coppola and Baumbach and started writing screenplays with them, to me, I think it lost a lot of the heart in a way, and the movies became less about real life and more about sort of these dioramas. And again, I still love those other films a lot, but I think his partnership with Owen was really special, and those are my three favorite movies that he did. The initial three with Owen, and I think that whatever Owen brings to his screenwriting and these stories, I think is this heart that this movie for sure has a lot of, and doesn't have a lot of his more visual flourishes. As he starts adding those with Rushmore and then Tenenbaums, I do still feel like those movies at least have that heart, and I maybe just a credit that to Owen. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I have noticed the difference in his films after their partnership, at least creatively, ended.
Yeah.
But I think this is very, I kind of wish he would kind of go back to some of this. So maybe he will in the future. He's got 2 movies coming out this year.
Yeah.
One a giant
Very
sci-fi
exciting.
one. So I feel like maybe that one's not the
No.
not the back to the ground, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Nonetheless, pretty good stuff, and yeah, great filmmaker.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.